Welcome to Native Bidaské, Native News Online's weekly spotlight on the people making news and leading change in Indian country.
Welcome to another episode of Native Bidaské. I'm Levi Rickert. I am the editor of Native News Online. In March, we celebrate Women's History Month, and we actually have somebody of large proportions who, in the history of modern Native Americans, has really contributed a whole lot. And we have with us today is Dr. LaNada War Jack, who is from the Shoshone-Bannock Tribes. Is that right?
Shoshone-Bannock.
Bannock, sorry. And Dr. War Jack, welcome to Native Bidaské. And you were at Alcatraz, one of the organizers of Alcatraz occupation back in November of 1969. I know you and you came to Michigan, and I interviewed you on stage at two universities, talked about the 50th anniversary. So could you tell our viewers, for so often younger people just don't know the history. So I'm so happy you're with us today. Talk about your involvement with Alcatraz, why it even came to pass.
Well, I was on relocation into the San Francisco Bay Area, and I was able to get admitted into the University of California at Berkeley. I was the first Native American student, and I recruited more students, and we organized our own group from the university campus. I was elected the chairperson. And then we joined the Third World Strike at Berkeley for Black, Chicano, Asian, and Native American Studies. We entered into the strike in January of '69. And by March of the same year, we successfully negotiated for a Department of Ethnic Studies. Then after that, then it became an issue of Alcatraz in the Bay Area. And the San Francisco Indian Center went ahead and initiated a claim on Alcatraz right after the prison was terminated in 1963. So it was, I think it's 1964, they went out and issued a claim for the island based upon their treaty, which stipulated in part that federal surplus property would revert back to the Indian tribes if the Indian tribes so claimed, which they claimed. So after several years of nothing happening, then the city of San Francisco came to on the newspapers that they were going to give it to a casino developer in 1969. And that's when we decided that there's a treaty obligation not being recognized. And escalated to take the island. And it was initiated first by a publicist who wanted publicity on it, and he chartered a boat. His name was Adam Nordwall, and we went out on the boat with him around the island. And then that was it. So it just wasn't enough of a deal to really make a claim, a treaty claim. So the students, we went back to the island. We went back to the Indian Center. We organized. We went back to the docks and organized a a group to go out to the island. And there were 14 students. So we went out, and after that, the press came out and the Coast Guard, and Richard Oakes got up and was continuing on with the publicity stunt, which his part with working with Adam Nardwall was to declare the island as Indian land. So he got up and made the declaration, which is not what we had intended as the students. We were taking the island. And so he gave us up. And so we all just went back.
Thank you for that answer. And I guess I have a question as it relates to the time period. 1969, of course, there was a lot of demonstrations with the Vietnam War, a lot of things in the civil rights movement. Do you view what you in your group going to Alcatraz, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I've seen your group basically kind of the Red Power movement. Is that an accurate description as kind of the beginning of the Red Power movement in reaction to what happened with civil rights and Vietnam protests? Tell us about the climate of that time period.
Well, we at the UC Berkeley side, we organized and became a part of the Third World Liberation Front. We joined the Third World Liberation Front for Black, Chicano, Asian, and Native American studies. And after doing that, then it came up about Alcatraz going to a casino developer. And as a result, we saw it was a violation of the treaty right, because an earlier group from San Francisco had claimed Alcatraz under the treaty 5 years prior to us coming out to the island. And they claimed it based upon their treaty, which stipulated in part that they could claim federal surplus property,
Mm-hmm.
and they were doing so for themselves as Native people. So we saw it as a treaty violation, and we went out to support the claim for the treaty. And it was during the earlier protests in Berkeley of the civil rights and social injustice. There had been a lot of strikes on the campus, and we were the last ones in the 60s to go out and take Alcatraz to protest the treaty violations.
And I know from history, some writers have said that the occupation of Alcatraz really was the beginning of a bigger movement. And sometimes people actually confuse your actions with the American Indian movement. And I don't know if AIM has ever tried to take claim to starting Alcatraz, the occupation, but I remember when you were here in Michigan and we talked about that, and you said, no, they came out to observe. Is that correct? Some of the AIM leaders at the time?
Well, the American Indian movement was a neighborhood watch out of Minneapolis.
Yes.
And they did ask to come out to the island, Dennis Banks and the Meanses, and they came out. And so it didn't become a national movement until 1973 with the, or 72 with the BIA takeover.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when it emerged as a national movement. But up until that time, it wasn't. So there was no American Indian movement involved, other than the fact that the 65 takeover from the American Indian Center,
Okay.
Russell Means was involved in that,
Okay.
but not as a member of AIM or anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because AIM formed in 1968, as I recall. Now, this is Women's History Month, and we're featuring you because of Women's History Month. You're so historic. Back then, was the fact that you were a female, were you considered an equal, or were you pushed aside, or did you have to fight your way? Talk about that, or was it just no big deal? The female side of who you are as an activist, advocate, strong advocate.
Well, I didn't realize at the time that we were living under the patriarchy.
Okay.
And I was just raised to just always speak up and to talk about things.
That's how the women in my family were. So go ahead.
So I just went ahead and kept on as usual. And then the guys used to say things about, hey, don't you know you women are supposed to be walking 10 feet behind us?
Oh my goodness. Wow.
And I'd start laughing and I'd say, oh, you guys are crazy. I never heard of that before. And, not going. And I never realized until later with the media, that they didn't want to film any women, but since I was the only one there at the time, because it was after Richard.
Mm-hmm.
He was our first vocal person, and he was there for the first 6 weeks of the 19-month occupation until his daughter passed away when she fell off the inside the building on the stairway.
Mm-hmm.
And so he left after that, and we
that was tragic.
It was horrible, but we still maintained the occupation for the rest of the 18 and a half months. And
yeah, I would like to talk about that, because I remember talking to Dennis Banks about AIM, and Dennis would say, and I would see him at public gatherings, say that the women played just as big a role as the men at Wounded Knee. But what he did, he mentioned what you said, and so I do want to talk about that, how the media in their minds, I guess back in the 60s and 70s, where it should be the men who were the vocals, and the women really never were highlighted, of the women of Wounded Knee. And so I think that's really interesting. So you basically are saying what Dennis told me about how the media back then handled. They just felt like women should be seen, not heard, I guess, or in the background. So is that correct?
No, that's correct. But when they didn't have any other person, when I was the person that had to speak, they had
Mm-hmm.
to talk to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that they were reluctant at first, but then they got used to it. And so just carried on.
What was the old slogan? I think maybe in the 70s, "You come a long way, baby." Remember? Remember that about the women, and so yeah, that is so interesting. I thank you for bringing that up. Hey, what Alcatraz? Two names that kind of emerged out of Alcatraz, and that's John Trudell and Wilma Mankiller. Can you talk about? And this is Women's History Month. Talk about Wilma first and what role she played at Alcatraz.
Well, Wilma didn't really play a role on the island. She came to visit the island. She had her sister and brother that lived on the island.
Okay.
And then she would come out maybe on the weekend and visit them and then leave. We had what they called Montezuma's Revenge.
Oh.
Of the water and the cooking facilities. We managed it the best we could, and so some of us were just immune from it, like myself. Never impacted me, but it did impact a lot of the people that came out, and she was one of them. So her brother and sister did stay on the island, though. And John Trudell was Radio Free Alcatraz. He was our person who had a radio show on the island.
Yes.
And he would interview some of the people, and he would always talk about the native situation and the conditions and things like that.
So when you have a book out that came out, as I recall, right around the time of the pandemic. So I think it'd be a good time, and we'll put it up on the screen. What's the name of the book? And can you just show us real quickly?
It's Native Resistance.
Okay.
An intergenerational fight for survival in life.
Wow. Yeah, and I'll say this, compliment you. You have your doctoral degree, and you actually, you were an activist, somebody at Alcatraz, but you had a life beyond that. Tell us some of your activities and how you advocated for Native people beyond Alcatraz Island.
Well, I came back to the reservation. I graduated from Berkeley and was on local boards and so for a while, and then I got married and lived in Nevada and got involved in the Nevada, California water compact and fought that one. And so that was a number of years. And then I came back to the reservation and then just got involved into the local politics and then back on Alcatraz, and then continued to speak for Native people.
Well, thank you for your many years of service, and we did want to highlight you. And in my estimation, you're one of those modern day women warriors that have really helped bring to focus the needs of Native Americans throughout the United States. And when I asked the question, what you've been doing, and any one of us who are involved, there's so many different fronts we can fight: the murdered and missing women front, and water rights, and on and on. And I know you went to Standing Rock, right?
Oh yeah, I was in Standing Rock too.
You're that warrior. So, anything else you want to tell us?
Well, I did get nominated last year for I was inducted into the Hall of Fame.
Oh, the Native American Hall of Fame. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
in
Well,
Oklahoma City.
congratulations. That's remarkable. And like I said, I've always admired you. It's just like sometimes women are the unsung heroes in our communities. So thank you so much for coming on. It's always a pleasure talking to you. Chimigwich. And to our viewers, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Native Bidaské. We will be back next week. And in the meantime, take care of your grannies, your aunties, and give each other hugs. Spread the love in Indian country. Chimigwich.
Thank you.
If you appreciate what we do here at Native News Online, we invite you to donate to support our continued work covering Indian country. You can scan this code with your smartphone or go to the link located below this video to donate today. We greatly appreciate your support. Please be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And be sure to scan this code or go to the link below to subscribe to our newsletter. Thank you for joining us today, and please be sure to join us again next week for another episode of Native Bidaské. Chimigwech.